Welcome back to MyStory, MyVoice, the podcast where we explore powerful voices that tell unique and compelling stories. I'm your host, Jasmine, and today we're diving into the world of an artist who redefined tradition, sound, and activism. Tanya Tagaq is not just a musician, she's a force of nature. Tanya is an Inuit throat singer who has completely showed and redefined what music can be. She blends rock, punk, and electronic music and traditional Inuit throat singing all together, creating something raw, emotional, and totally unique. Today, we'll explore her journey, her cultural roots, and how she uses her voice to fight for environmental and indigenous rights. Plus, we'll check out some of the most powerful songs, albums, and collaborations. So, let's get into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is her background and influence. So, who is Tanya? Well, she was born in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut, way up in the Arctic. Growing up, she was surrounded by breathtaking and beautiful landscapes of the north, but also the harsh realities of colonial history. Things like the loss of Inuit culture and language. But instead of letting history silence her, she found strength in it. She embraced Inuit throat singing, a tradition that was nearly lost, and it turned it into something the world had never heard before. Normally, throat singing is done in pairs, almost like a game. But Tanya, she did it solo on her own. And let me tell you, when you hear her sing, it's like nothing else. It's emotional, intense, and deeply connected to the land and her ancestors. Now, let's talk about the throat singing itself. What is it? Where it comes from? And why Tanya's version is so groundbreaking. Now we're going to talk about the cultural significance of Inuit throat singing. Alright, so let's break it down. Inuit throat singing, or in other words, Tagaq, is an ancient form of vocal art performed mostly by indigenous women. Traditionally, it was done as a fun competition. Two singers would go back and forth, creating these rhythmic sounds till one of them laughed or ran out of breath. Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, unfortunately, Christian missionaries banned it for several years, calling it a pagan. They called it a pagan. But thanks to artists like Tanya, it's making a huge, big comeback. And she's not just preserving it, she's completely changing it. She mixes it with modern music and styles, making something totally fresh while still honoring her own roots. Now we're going to play a little snippet of one of Tanya's songs called Uja. Oh my god, that was the most touching, moving music that I've ever heard. Tanya, you did your big one with this. Now we have to go back and now we're going to talk about Tanya's music, albums, songs, and her collaborations. Seems exciting, huh? Okay, let's talk about her music. One of her most famous albums is Animism 2014, which won the Polish Music Prize. This album is wild. It blends electronic and rock sounds with Inuit throat singing, creating something that's almost amazing. Sings like Kanabu and Uja give you this raw energy that just pulls you in. Then there's Retribution 2016, an even more intense and amazing album that tackles heavy topics like climate change and colonialism. I promise you, when you listen to it, you'll feel every single emotion she's pouring into and inside this album. She's obviously not doing this alone. Tanya has worked with some big people in the industry. She teamed up with Buffy Santee, Mary On, You Got to Run, an anthem about strength and resilience. And if you ever listen to Brozork's album Medulla, you might have noticed Tanya's throat singing woven into the tracks. That's right. She took traditional Inuit music and brought it into a bigger global audience. On this episode of MyStory, MyVoice, it's brought to you by the Inuit Art Foundation, supporting Indigenous artists. It's just about celebrating their work. It's about empowering communities, preserving culture, and amplifying voices. Whether it's visual arts, music, or storytelling, Indigenous creators are pushing boundaries and keeping traditions alive. Want to help? Follow and support Indigenous artists. Purchase their work, or make sure to share their stories. Visit InuitArtFoundation.org to learn more. Let's uplift Indigenous voices together. Thank you. It was really great to have you guys here, and thank you for this message. The last thing we're going to talk about today is Tanya Tagaq's activism and impact. Her music isn't just about sound. It's about making a statement. She's a fearless activist for Indigenous rights, environmental protection, and social justice. She's spoken out about the effects of climate change on the Arctic, her treatment of missing and murdered Indigenous women and Inuit communities. Her performances are political and raw, pushing people to confront uncomfortable truths. She even wrote a book called Split Tooth 2018, which blends fiction, poetry, and memoir perfectly. It's beautiful, haunting, and deeply personal. I've read that book and I really suggest you guys to buy it. Now we're going to answer some of your questions and a mix of mine. The first question is, what's her goal with music? I think she's all about reclaiming and celebrating her culture while shaking things up a bit. She makes music to be felt, not to be comfortable. Her goal is to challenge the mainstream music industry, trying to bring Indigenous voices to the front, and to also make sure that Inuit stories are heard loud and clear. How does Tanya's music help people understand Inuit culture? If you have never listened to Inuit throat singing before, listening to Tanya Tagaq is like stepping into another world. She doesn't just sing, she tells different stories through sound. She brings listeners into the experience of her culture's life, the struggles they have faced, and their connection to the land. It's really powerful and makes people think about Indigenous culture in a whole new point of view. Let's see what we have learned today. Tanya Tagaq isn't just a musician, she's a movement. She's preserving her culture's traditions while breaking musical barriers. She's using her own form of art to fight for the environment and Indigenous rights. She's also proving that throat singing is the future, not just history. If you haven't listened to her music yet, I recommend to go check out Animism, Retribution, or even her book Split Tooth. I promise you all right now, it's all worth it. A big thank you for tuning into My Story, My Voice. If you enjoyed today's episode, stay tuned for more and follow us on all platforms: YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram at My Story, My Voice. for more stories like this. Next time we'll explore another groundbreaking artist making a difference. Until then, keep learning, listening, and sharing important stories.